Hey everyone, Anthony Alfredo here. Hey everybody, Anthony Alfredo here. Hey everybody, Anthony Alfredo here. This is gonna be insane. Oh! Oh, this one's gonna hurt. Oh! Oh, this is... no way. Look at me. This is unbelievable how realistic this feels.
Hey everyone, Anthony Alfredo here. I am here with D-Box Technologies, SimSeats driving simulators, as well as some special guests that I will introduce to you in a little bit. We're really excited to have you here, so thank you for joining this exclusive webinar. We're going to cover all sorts of topics related to sim racing, real racing, how D-Box Technologies and SimSeats driving simulators play such a significant role in not just my career, but in the sim racing industry, motorsports industry in general, and much more. We're also going to answer any questions you may have. So before we get started, we're going to get right into this, and at the end, give away a SimSeats SRX chassis, which is probably one of the coolest parts about this, and I'm sure what everybody's most excited about. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mark from D-Box, and he's going to take it away.
Hey everyone, hopefully everybody's having a good evening or afternoon wherever you're from. So really quickly, I just want to introduce everybody. We have assembled a really cool a panel of experts here, all the way from D-Box to SimSeats and even a race engineer of Anthony himself. So we'll just go really quickly through everybody and make sure that everybody's properly introduced. You may know some of these people, but still they're that awesome that you really want to hear from them right away. So without further ado, we'll start with Zach and Garrett from SimSeats.
Hello everybody, I'm Zach, founder and managing director of SimSeats. We're here at SimSeats right now for this webinar, and in terms of the panelists, we're going to be kind of your equipment experts. So thanks to everybody for joining along, and hopefully we can answer some of your questions on D-Box systems.
And I'm Garrett Maines, professional sim racer, and also SimSeats product expert.
All right, thank you guys. Moving along, we will go straight to David, Anthony's race engineer.
Hey, I'm David Markham. I'm a race engineer at Front Row Motorsports on the number 38 of Anthony Alfredo.
All right, moving swiftly to Yannick from D-Box. Oh, you're muted, I think, Yannick, or unless that's me. There you go.
There you go. Hi, everyone.
Has to happen.
Yannick Jem, Vice President of Sales at D-Box. Been with the company for 15 years, so quite passionate about what we do, what we can bring, and also about all the customers we have out on the market. So quite happy to be here today to talk about D-Box, give you some insights, and answer some of the questions you have.
All right, thank you so much. So really quickly, before we get right down to the nitty-gritty, I just want to walk you guys through some of the stuff we'll be talking about. So first of all, we'll discuss how simulation improves your on-track performance. So we're really lucky to have Anthony and David as engineer present with us. So obviously they'll be able to go in depth with that. We have kind of a panel/interview section designed for that. However, do not worry. If you have questions, please let us know in the YouTube chat as well. We've gathered a bunch of your questions on social media over the past week, and we have some of those that we want to get right to at the Q&A section that will be taking place at the end of the webinar. But if you do have still questions that remain, please let us know in the chat, and we'll make sure we'll hopefully get to them. Obviously, we don't want to keep you guys too long, and we want to get to the prize giveaway as fast as possible. But still, if you have questions about anything, let us know. Other than that, we'll also look into things to look out for when you're building your own rig or deciding to buy one. So basically, there's obviously some key aspects that you want to make sure that you check out and cover when you're designing your rig. And then finally, we have a video of Anthony walking you through some of the key features of the D-Box software. So from fine tuning to specific settings that he prefers, we'll walk you guys through everything. So without further ado, we'll start right away with the panel/interview section. I have a few questions that are important questions that we get often asked with D-Box and SimSeats and Anthony. To give you guys as much value as possible if you're sim racers yourself or you're simply interested in racing in general and NASCAR racing or Anthony. So the first question I have is for Anthony himself. Basically, Anthony, can you speak a little bit to the added value of training on a simulator from the point of view of a NASCAR driver? Of course, people would be willing to, super excited to hear your feedback, and how is it relevant to your on-track performance?
Absolutely. Well, first off, simulation has become has had a tremendous impact in all sorts of motorsports, different disciplines of racing in recent years, mainly because of how much value it provides for race preparation, not only for the driver as a training tool and to help prepare for new tracks, new cars, and even experienced drivers rely on it because the race teams utilize the simulation to adjust their setups, make not just mechanical changes, but aerodynamic changes that they can actually test in sim to help have an idea and kind of a game plan put together before they actually go to the track with some narrowed down changes they might like to make or need to make throughout a race. For myself, it's been extremely important and more important than ever as of recently because with COVID-19 restrictions, we actually don't have practice or qualifying. So as a NASCAR Cup Series rookie trying to learn a new car and going to many tracks for the first time, I've used the simulator to not only get visuals, but actually learn where certain bumps are, what the driving line is, right. How to drive the car specifically, and all those things are just help you get up to speed faster because when the drop of the green flag is your first lap of the race, obviously, or first laps on track, you need to make the most of it. And in the Cup Series, the most competitive series in stock car racing and the highest level of our sport of NASCAR, it's super competitive, so you can't waste any time figuring it out, and that's why simulation's been so important.
Super insightful. Thank you. Obviously, I'm sure at the peak level, especially in the Cup Series or any other series, to be honest, you want to have as much preparation as possible, and of course, especially now in 2021, simulation is very, very important. Moving on, I have a question for David. So from your point of view of an engineer, what kind of data can be collected and what are you looking for when drivers train on simulation rigs? What are some of the key elements that stand out to make them improve, obviously, and get the best results possible?
Yeah, so as an engineer, I'm sitting and running sim laps on my computer all day long and looking at just a bunch of squiggly lines, and we're trying to predict what a driver's reaction to different changes is going to be. So it's really valuable when we can get Anthony in the simulator and do different changes and see what he says. Sometimes we think we've got a great big change that's going to really help, and you put it in, and Anthony says, I didn't notice you changed anything. And sometimes you make a small little tweak, and he says, oh, you found something. And then from a driver perspective, as he was just talking about, we can help him look at the line that he's running, making sure that he's got that down, the braking, when we go to road courses, the shifting points, and then we can compare to other Ford drivers in our camp to see how they're doing.
Very cool. I mean, the simulator almost becomes sort of a communication tool between the driver and his engineer and his whole team. So that's very, very, very nice to know, obviously, for mere mortals like ourselves. So moving along with the guys from SimSeats, I have a question for you. So Zach and Garrett, when you're designing SimSeat products, how much of a focus is put on ensuring that they can be used as training tools and not simply for fun and basically for real drivers like Anthony? What would you say is the feature that stands out the most when it comes to realism?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it really is a big deal when it comes to working with drivers and making sure it's realistic. And so, Anthony, we spent a lot of time together working on this and, making sure that's realistic. And he's not afraid to tell me what he thinks the simulator should be doing and how it should feel. And so to me, to answer the question, the biggest thing is ergonomics. And it's actually something that Anthony's helped us out a lot with since he became a SimSeats customer and other drivers too. And by ergonomics, I mean the position of the wheel, position of the seat, and the pedals, and making sure that's as realistic as possible. Because if the ergonomics aren't right, then it's not going to feel like a real car. and being a driver myself, I really want it to match. And so to me, that's a really important element of simulation. What would you say, Garrett?
Yeah, absolutely. We put a lot of emphasis on getting all that straight with our, latest pedal attachment. It was a huge focus on getting the pedals exactly where they should be. We took a lot of time to make sure it was adjustable for all cars. Some, cars you mount the pedals on the floor or invert them, or a mix of both. And, to be able to get that option and be able to place the pedals exactly where they need to be has been a huge plus. The same thing with the wheel. We use a direct drive wheelbase. That way you get as much feedback as you can. It gives the drivers, the information that they would get in the real car to allow them to, really immerse into the race.
Super. Thanks a lot, guys. Again, super insightful. I'm seeing people in the chat are really happy with the answers, and I'm glad. Another question I've got is for Yannick. So at D-Box, we know D-Box is a leader, and it prides itself in its capability of providing incredibly accurate feedback to the driver. So it's super relevant when it comes to pro racing, and therefore it makes it a strong tool for sim racers, but also real drivers. In your opinion, what makes D-Box stand out when it comes to haptic systems?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I think, like the panel we have today, it's about the professional and the drivers themselves. They've always been the fuel for our development in the sim racing market. In order to provide an haptic experience that gets you as close as possible to the real feel. But if I could lay it out in 3 points, I would say the ecosystem, the plug-and-play approach, and the motion cueing are really 3 key points for D-Box. When I talk about the ecosystem, I'm talking about building relationship with professional simulator manufacturers such as SimSeat, who can really integrate key components in making, like they said, the ergonomics as close as possible. Second point in that would be racing studios incorporating our SDKs, which will provide us the ability to achieve the highest level of fidelity, meaning that we get all the cues from the game directly sending the information to our actuators. And also the high quality components that we use, the robustness of our system. It allows us to cater to the sim racing community and provide, motion, vibration, textures, all in a single product. And also that whether you have 10 pounds on the simulator or 1,000 pounds on the simulator, the experience will be exactly the same. The plug and play approach is quite simple. We want to make it as easy as possible for the users, both on the hardware side from the installation. There's no maintenance on the software, but also on the software side where it's easy to connect with the various games. Also a lot of flexibilities to create user profile. We're going to talk a little further down with Anthony in a few minutes. And ultimately motion cueing, it's our goal to be as close as possible, and the most effective way to approach sim racing is to create motion cueing. What motion cueing does, it builds reflexes and allows the body and the brain to fully be immersed in the race.
All right. Thank you so much, Yannick. Super insightful. It seems like quality is the name of the game for D-Box, and no corners are cut short, obviously. All right. That was it for the first section of the interview. Like I said, I see there's already a few questions popping up in the chat. We're not forgetting you guys. There's a Q&A section at the end right before the prize giveaway, and we'll make sure to get to as many as we can. That's where we're moving fairly quickly. We're going to move right away to the second section of the webinar, which is basically a walkthrough of how to optimize your own rig, so your hardware setup. And while I pull up the video to show you guys, I'll let Zach and Garrett talk to you a little bit about what to expect in the coming video.
Yeah, so hopefully you guys get a lot out of this one. The idea was to show you the motion platform that we have. And if you want to get a motion platform from SimSeats, great. You'll have an idea of what you're getting. If you decide that you want to build your own, then you can use some of these tips and tricks, as things that we've learned over the years to help build your sim. So take a look. Hope you enjoy it.
Here we go.
This is the SimSeats MP33-4 platform, and if you're getting one from SimSeats, this video will give you a good idea of the quality of product you're getting. If you're building your own, this is still a great video because you can replicate some of the key characteristics that make this a really successful motion system with D-Box actuators. Zooming in close, you can see some of those characteristics that make it successful. A very strong steel tubular chassis that does not flex no matter what's going on with the actuators to transmit as much vibration and motion as possible to the user. Another characteristic you can see at the wiring is well thought out. So the wiring comes out of the bottom. The power you can see coming out from one side so that you have your power going into one location. It's nice and clean wiring, won't get pinched. You can also see the wiring going into each actuator is coming out from the side and then drops down. No chance it's going to get pinched by the simulator that sits on top, and as it goes underneath it gets held and connected properly so that it won't get pinched underneath. Zinc yellow chromate hardware is used here. It's all grade 8, so you're going to want to use very strong hardware to make sure it doesn't break. You're also going to want to consider using locking hardware because this does vibrate quite a bit. You don't want things to come loose, and it's kind of like a race car. You're going to have to keep tightening things up if you don't use locking hardware. And then finally, the actuators are very close to where the simulator is, so that fabric area is where the SRX chassis sits on our platform, and the actuators are as close as possible to where the chassis is because that's going to give you the most transmission of motion to the driver. If those are super close, as tight as you can get them within reason. And that's what we've done here. So key characteristics are nice strong chassis, actuators close as possible, good clean wiring, and then good hardware. Now we can take a look at it in action. We've got Garrett here is driving, or in this particular case he's wrecking, and as he's hitting things, you can see you're getting quite a bit of motion out of that, hitting walls and cars and so forth. But the good news is that doesn't happen much with Garrett, and in this case he's cutting through traffic, and what you're seeing from a motion perspective is the suspension movement that's occurring in game. You're actually feeling all of that suspension movement, you're feeling all those vibrations, and it's very accurate, and it's giving you good cues to what's occurring when you navigate the controls. You turn the steering wheel, or in this case you can see just going straight, you're even getting feedback. You're getting bumps as you're going down the road. Those bumps are in real life. They're laser scan tracks, so those are the real bumps on the track. And then in addition to that, again, navigating the controls, you can see as he presses on the throttle, the brakes, you're getting the chassis to dip forward or to roll backwards, or as he corners, you see the suspension load up to one side, and that's all what's really happening to the suspension on the car, and you're feeling that. So we'll back out again, and you can see that even though it's only 1.5 inches travel at the bottom, you're getting quite a bit of motion up higher, like where the driver is. You look at the high points of the chassis, like the seat or the steering wheel, you can see it moves quite a bit. And the key characteristic here is what you see here, you actually get more when you're sitting in it. So there's even more vibration motion than what you can see. It's very accurate. For me as a driver, that's important to have accurate motion. And if you had any issues with motion being off from what's really happening, then it can be a bit confusing to the senses, and that's just going to make it a terrible experience. And as we switch back to the platform, this time we're looking at the underside, and really the key message here is how to route your cables and your wiring. You've got cables coming from the actuators going to the actuator control module. You got Ethernet cables for communications, and then you got power. So as you can see here on the MP33-4, that the wiring is nice and clean and organized, and it's connected to the bottom of the chassis so that it doesn't come loose and get pinched. You can see that locking hardware that we had mentioned before to make sure nuts and bolts don't come loose. So that's really the big message for the underside here. Just keep it nice and clean and organized, and make sure that you don't have any issues with wires getting pinched. And as we take a look at the bottom again and zoom out, I hope you find this helpful. If you're buying a system from SimSeats, this is the quality of product you get. If you're building your own, then I would highly recommend you mimic some of these key characteristics to make sure that you get your best bang for your buck and the most reliability out of your system. So there you go, folks. Giving away some of our secrets, but hopefully it's helpful for you. Hopefully it's insightful. If you have any more questions about the build of that platform, please put your questions in the chat and we'll try to get to them.
All right. Thank you so much. Hopefully that was helpful and educational for a lot of you. There's a lot that goes in building a solid platform, and I think SimSeats does a really good job. The goal here is really to help you guys. Like I said in the video, whether you buy it or you build it yourself, we just want to make sure that you get the best experience possible with SimSeats and Dbox. So yeah, that's really the key. So moving forward. We have another video we want to show you guys, and Anthony, this time you might want to introduce this one, walking everybody through your Dbox settings. So while I pull it up, I'll let you introduce everything.
Perfect. Well, first, I do want to say I've seen some excellent questions popping up in the chat since we started, so please save those for the end. Definitely want to address those. There's some really, really great ones that stood out to me. All of them are great, actually, but this next section, now that you know a little bit what the Dbox motion platform looks like, especially with someone driving with it, I'd like to share this video I made about the Dbox settings, how it all works, how to utilize the software, and be able to adjust the cues for your personal liking or from any experience you may actually have.
Hey everyone, Anthony Alfredo, and today I wanted to help guide you through the Dbox setup and how to install not only Dbox Game Center, but adjust your motion code settings for whichever game or simulation that you are playing. In this case, I'm an iRacing user, and when I hop on the service, I can adjust all sorts of haptics that Dbox has to offer through Dbox Game Center settings. We're going to open those up, and I'm going to help guide you through that process. So once you go to the Dbox website and download Dbox Game Center, you're going to open up that application right here. And when you open it, you're going to see this. So in this case, the only game or sim that I have installed is iRacing. And as you can see, the status says it's ready. I have the latest motion code installed, and you could do reinstall, which will allow you to download the motion code. I'm going to do that just for the sake of this video. So this is something you'll be able to do. You can click yes. You click next. Next. Agree, and then it'll start. It's pretty simple. It's as simple as one click on launch, and it's going to open up iRacing. Now you're on the iRacing website. You can also set this up for beta UI, and for future reference too, if you want to adjust your settings, you just click on the settings tab, and here are your iRacing motion code settings. But of course, that's relative to whichever game or simulation you're playing. So these are the motion codes, right? So if we are playing, we'll just pick a random one, Grid 2. If we were playing Grid 2, you would click settings on that and be able to adjust it all. In this case, obviously it's iRacing. Here's your global settings for everything. But if you go on the motion code and hit settings, it'll open up this. And when you have this open, there's your main level. And I have everything at baseline right now. It's all on default. But you can go to the motion profile editor and adjust each individual haptic. You can also set up different profiles, which is really cool. So you can set up one that maybe is a little bit more aggressive, one that's a little bit more mellow, depending on which you'd prefer to use. And some people may want to set up different profiles for different cars, right? So if you're racing an off-road vehicle that has really aggressive and emphasized movements and body roll and all sorts of different things that these haptics are useful for, you might want to turn them up a little bit. But if you're racing some sort of road car that maybe is more rigid, doesn't move as much, and is pretty stiff and just rides low to the ground, you may want to turn them down. And all these, I think the baseline's perfect for stock car racing, actually, on ovals and even when they head to the road courses. So I've just left them where they're at. But as you can see, you can adjust each individual one, starting with your general motion. We're going to go through each one of these just to help guide you through the process a little bit and help you have a little bit better understanding. The acceleration front to rear, see, default's at 40 for the majority of these. Some of them are different values, which is why you see different numbers there. But you got your front to rear, your acceleration front to rear reactivity, then your left right, and your up and down. Then when you go to banking, you have your overall body roll, your pitch, and your recenter. So that's a different value, as you can see, which is why it's 50. This is out of 100. And you can hit this nice little undo button and go back to 50 right there. So that always helps if you want to test and mess around with stuff and maybe you didn't like it, or maybe you forgot what default was. You can just hit that and go back to baseline. your engine vibration. This is one of two things I adjusted: my engine vibration and my skid vibration, which we'll get to in a second. I have it turned all the way down, actually, but you can put it up a little bit. I find that the rest of the haptics kind of not overpower anything. I think they compensate for the engine vibration, which is why I have it all. It's just personal preference. It's also kind of cool if you do want it, though, and if you want to turn it up all the way and just really feel the horsepower out of some of those big motors and the iRacing Service or any of those cool cars, and even some of the other ones, just feel those engines roar in high-speed sections of racetracks. It's also automatic, so you can pick something specific, but if you have it on automatic, it'll adjust it, or you can do custom RPM ranges too. Like I said, this is all actually on baseline. Skid vibration I have all the way down as well. These values for the vibrations are just the overall intensity of it, if you are curious. And the last few we have here starts with suspension, which is your overall motion and vibration intensity of the suspension in your race car or whichever car you're driving. The surface texture, this is another intensity value, and baseline's 40, but that's really cool for just getting over bumps and experiencing different characteristics of racetracks while you're racing. Crash damping, this is all the way off, but this is something you can check on, and you can kind of adjust that for depending on items you may be hitting or objects you're hitting during different races. Gear shift is another intensity value, and that's set to 40 automatically, but this is pretty neat too, because when you're in a car that maybe shifts aggressively, or say you're in a stock car and you're banging gears, you shift and you stand back on the gas after you pull it in a gear and stand back on the throttle, and it launches you back like that, which is really cool. And that's something you might want to adjust for different types of cars as well. But that's what's neat about this, is you can adjust each one of these haptics individually and kind of develop the best overall experience for yourself. But as I pointed out in some other videos testing the overall capabilities of D-Box technology, I think they have the baseline set perfectly. I think they're very well-rounded and diverse for all sorts of different disciplines of racing, and I think that they are great the way they are. Like I said, in my case, the only thing I adjusted was the vibration settings for the engine and skid, but other than that, I think they work for all sorts of things. But if you really wanted to dig deeper, you can develop different profiles. For me, I'm a NASCAR driver, and in stock car racing, these settings seem to work really well for me on the ovals and even the road courses. When I get into different disciplines and I'm in different types of race cars, racing at different tracks, some of those things I've never driven before. I may not have driven at that specific track or in that specific car ever in real life, so I don't really know what to adjust, right? So I kind of just go with the flow and run with this. But the NASCAR and stock car racing things, I definitely have a pretty good idea of what it should feel like, and I think the baseline's perfect, which is why I haven't really touched it. But like I said, if you want to develop other profiles for your dirt oval racing, your dirt road course, and your paved oval and road course disciplines, that's something useful to have, and I think is probably one of the most valuable things that D-Box has to offer.
So to conclude on that, I hope the video was insightful first and foremost, and showed relatively the ease of just downloading the software and how simple it is to adjust your settings. If you don't know what each setting means, there's some of them I didn't know what exactly it would do or what it meant. So I just hopped into a session on iRacing, and it all works in real time. So you can just have it up and drag the slider and go through one adjustment at a time. I recommend leaving it all at baseline and doing one at a time so that you could feel which each individual haptic adjustment does. But there's very subtle cues that you want to take advantage of to make the experience as realistic as possible for you. And sometimes maybe just adjust for your personal preference. So maybe you're someone who just chooses for it to move more or not move as much. As I said earlier, one of the coolest parts is the fact that there's different profiles you can create. So I see a lot of people in the chat who like to race different things, including maybe more off-road than pavement, road course, or ovals. And for myself, obviously, I like to have a profile for the oval racing. And some of the other things, I think it's cool, like with off-road, to have a different profile that has a lot more motion. Maybe a road racing setting for open wheel or something has less motion, and just a lot of different cues, obviously, that you can adjust. Some of the things, as I mentioned in the video, I don't have experience driving a lot of these cars or tracks in iRacing, so I kind of just roll with the baseline, and I don't really have any real world experience to lean on like I do on the ovals. And in fact, the baseline settings for the oval racing worked really well. So it's really cool that you can kind of customize the experience for yourself, whoever's utilizing the rig, and also adjust it for different disciplines of racing, or maybe you're not even an iRacing user and you're using it for some other sort of game or simulation.
Thank you so much. Very insightful video. Yes, I'm sure people will be pleased. I see a lot of good questions in the chat, as Anthony mentioned earlier. A lot of questions that we can address. I've taken a note of a bunch of them, so we'll make sure to get to those right after. Well, actually, we're already here. We're at the Q&A section. It's already been 30 minutes, believe it or not. So yeah, we have a few questions that have come straight from social media, where we asked you guys to ask us some questions. We have 5 that we want to get through because we thought they were really, really good. But then we'll jump right into the questions that you guys had directly in the chat. We'll try to get to them all as quickly as possible. So right away, we found a question for David on social media. So for a race engineer, how long has simulation training been a part of regular training routine for professional race car drivers?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's been about 7 years, and that really coincides with NASCAR's testing policy. So about a decade ago, teams could go test just about as much as they wanted to, and NASCAR slowly dwindled that down to now there's basically no testing at all at the track. So especially now with COVID last year and this year, we don't have any practice. It makes it that much more important on top of that. And it just helps the driver get up to speed that much quicker before they get to the track. We used it recently. Anthony never been to Richmond. We spent a lot of time on there, learning the line, learning how to get into the corners, and we felt like that really paid off. And also recently, Anthony got to go up to Circuit of the Americas for a little test session in a Mustang, and felt like that was very beneficial for him before he went there, just to figure out the track and the turns and all that kind of thing.
Super. Thank you, David. Not a bad day at work. You're driving a Mustang on the Circuit of the Americas. I wish, but hey. We have another question. We'll jump right into it for Zach and Garrett. In your opinion, which D-Box system is the most realistic and better for driver training?
Oh yeah, so that's a good question because there's different length actuators, and we mentioned in the video that there's 1.5 inch, and that's our standard. There's 3 inch and there's a 6 inch as well. I would say, Garrett, I like the 1.5 inch. I mean, it's a solid system, and if I had never tried anything else, I would have said that's good enough. So 1.5 inch does the job, but I don't know if you remember, but we had a 3 inch system that came in here. What did you think about that?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. It's definitely a lot more motion. It was one of our really cool builds that we got to do probably about a year ago. It's just a lot of motion. I feel like it's basically a just extra information that you get from it with all the the extra movement. It's honestly, it's kind of hard to tell that it's just 3 inches. It feels like it feels like a lot, but it's definitely an improvement from the 1.5. But the 1.5, it's unbelievable the amount of feedback you can get from that.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where we had the 3 inch to try, and we had the 1.5 inch system side by side. With that, the 3 inch definitely shined. You could tell the difference. So I mean, I think that's the way to go if you can. But 1.5 inch still does the job. We didn't mention 6 very much, but really 6 inch, I think, in my opinion, is better for either flight sim or maybe some of the off-road stuff in iRacing, like if you're doing the trucks or if you're doing a lot of rally, then 6 inch, where you getting that extra travel would be really helpful. So hopefully that answers the question.
Super. Moving along, 3 more until we get to the questions in the chat. Anthony, what would you say is your favorite aspect of the D-Box Sim and SimSeat Sim, actually? Sorry.
Well, I start with the SimSeats driving simulator since I added the D-Box technology and SimSeats motion platform to the rig. But for me personally, one thing I want to mention, to be completely transparent with all of you here, is the relationships between the three of us started just completely naturally. I met SimSeats as a customer, and that's exactly how I met D-Box 2, through SimSeats, looking to add those haptics to my rig. So I think that's something cool that not a lot of people can say. You know, these are just honest, unbiased opinions, believe it or not. And from my own experience with SimSeats, what led me to them was the fact that I had been on a lot of different sim rigs in the market, and SimSeats was the best for me personally, and I think for any user, which is why I always recommend them, because of the fact it's so ergonomically accurate, as Zach and Garrett were talking about earlier. I sit pretty much exactly how I do in the real life race car. The distance from me to my wheel, the height of my wheel, where my pedals are located. I have a full bucket, full containment seat, and then of course the triple monitors that wrap around. It just makes me feel fully immersed and allow me to make the most out of iRacing. It's really the difference between just being on the simulation and it being an actual training tool. Now, to add the D-Box actuators and motion platform to the rig was super easy. I put it together myself, and I actually have a video on my YouTube channel showing how I did it by myself, and how it's simply plug and play. It just all hooks up, and it was super easy to do and easy to add on. Like I said, I had a static simulator in the beginning, and I added this on, and it really upped my sim racing game. And this is or during COVID, when I didn't have practice or qualifying in the Xfinity Series last year, and then now to move up to the Cup Series and not have it, it's been super helpful for me and been significant for my training, just to actually be able to feel a lot of these new tracks I'm going to, as well as the suspension and chassis movement of a Cup Series car. So that's probably the biggest thing to me, and why both of them go hand in hand. Not only do they just work well together in general, but I'm not developing any sort of bad habits, and I'm not sitting in a way that would affect me when I get back into the real life car. Everything's pretty much the same, so I feel right at home when I strap into the real life car or the simulator.
Super. Yeah, it does seem that both SimSeats and D-Box allow a very big importance to realism. So obviously it would make sense that it basically flows into your real life racing once you hop out of the sim. I have a question here that probably applies to both Zach and Yannick, so I'll pull you both up, and maybe you can find amongst yourselves who will answer first. But how many G-forces can D-Box actually pull? So let me pull you both up right here.
Yeah, Yannick, I think I'll start with this one if that's okay with you.
Go for it, Zach.
Yeah, so G-forces come from centrifugal force of turning a car through a corner, or from braking. You can't replicate G-force without moving, and acceleration is where that's coming from. And so if you're sitting in a simulator, there's the only G-force there is gravitational force, which is 1G pulling down towards the center of the earth. And so the only way that you could potentially replicate that in a simulator is to maybe turn sideways and feel 1G lateral. But I think that's kind of a distraction. We're not here to replicate G-force because it can't be done in a simulator. So what we're really trying to do is provide you suspension movement and to give you motion cueing. Motion cueing is a really interesting subject. Maybe, Yannick, it's a good time to kick it over to you and talk about what motion cueing is and how that works with D-Box.
Thanks, Zach. I think it's a good explanation, and really the challenge with G-forces is you can't sustain it for the time that you would in an actual real car. I think there's only a handful of simulators that are 90 million plus that are the size of a football field that can recreate that. So we've taken another direction since we couldn't do it, really basing our strategy on the suspension of the cars and really creating motion cues. What are motion cues? One way to describe it is, we like to say that when somebody is starting a sentence, and the brain completes it. So it's really what we're doing. So we're putting the basics of the cueing of whatever you feel in order to put the reflexes to your body, that when you go in the actual race car, they will feel really similar. So, I mean, to the G-forces side, I think that's really the angle that we've taken, and really the angle that has been successful for us over the years.
Yeah, if I can add to it, the
Yeah.
suspension movement is huge, Yannick, because something that you can hear a driver talking about, Anthony, you've probably talked a lot about, is going into the corner and feeling the chassis set, right? Or feeling the car settle down or set up. And you can feel that suspension movement. That's a suspension movement that a driver's talking about when he says that. And you can get that out of D-Box system because their focus is suspension movement.
Super. I'll just leave you guys up because the next question also applies to you. Maybe we start with Yannick this time. D-Box is really expensive. Why is that? That's a question we get a lot, and I think it's a perfect time to address it. There's a lot that goes into what makes D-Box its product, so there's nobody better than Yannick to let you guys know and answer that question finally.
We've never had that one before, so how is D-Box a good investment, you mean? Joke aside, there's a cost for D-Box, but let me do a little bit of background here. D-Box has been in business for 20 years creating motion system. We've created a strong name into the commercial world, providing our system to a wide variety of markets and applications. So from commercial theaters to driving, flight, rehabilitation, all the way to building heavy equipment simulators for customers like John Deere and Caterpillar. So our idea 20 years ago was to democratize the haptic experience from the multi-million-dollar simulator all the way down to an affordable yet very reliable and suited for all application. So quite a number of our systems are in the field for over 15 years and still provide the exact same motion cueing experience. So we've introduced last year the G3 series, which has enabled us to enter the consumer market. And we're committing to pursue this vision. So we're continuing to invest into our R&D department, and they're busy achieving that vision. So Zach, I don't know, perhaps you can explain the various configurations for someone that would like to get started with D-Box and perhaps the upgrade path they have.
Yeah, sure. Well, as Anthony mentioned, he actually bought a Legend package that was static, non-motion, and he added it later. So, I mean, when you're looking at all the components that are involved in an entire turnkey system, it can be a big number, but you can spread it out, and that even includes the motion system itself. So that's one thing, is that you can add it on later and spread out that investment. The other thing is we're talking about the 4-post motion system, as we call it, where in D-Box terminology, it's the 4250i for the 1.5 inch, Yannick, which is 4 actuators and 2 ACMs. Well, there's a couple of different configurations that are less D-Box components, so that can bring the cost down. So we've done 3 actuator systems before, where there's actually just 1 ACM, and you have 2 in the back and 1 in the front. And then you can do 2 actuator systems where you just have a pivot point up front. And so that's reducing your component cost to get that down, to make that more achievable. So there are options there. I mean, if you're looking at getting a motion system and the price is out of reach, feel free to still contact us, and we can help you out. If you're buying the whole system from us, or if you're just buying the D-Box actuators from SimSeats, talk to us and we can walk you through some of the options there. And if I could add just one more thing, Yannick, I've been doing simulators for over 10 years, and we tried a lot of motion systems. And one of the reasons why we're using D-Box is because it's accurate. I know it's a more expensive option, but there's a reason. It's better quality. And as we mentioned in the video, if your motion doesn't line up with what you see and what's actually happening, there's no value, and in fact, it can hurt. And so that's, in my opinion, money totally wasted. And so just keep that in mind. It is an investment. It does need to be accurate. and you can't go wrong with D-Box. I'm sorry to sound like a commercial, but that's kind of that's why we use D-Box now, and there's just some things to think about when in terms of talking cost.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. Super insightful, very in-depth, really good, actually. That concludes technically the part, but we have a bunch of other questions in the chat that we really want to get to. I know Anthony's been writing to me while you guys are talking that he has some questions specifically that he wants to answer. So what I'll do is looking myself at the chat. There's a bunch of questions that are super technical that I think Yannick and Zach are the best people to answer. So we'll start with those since you're already on screen, and then we'll move to, I'll let you, Anthony, pick some of the questions that you might want to answer yourself, and maybe even involve David if it's relevant and it makes sense. So the first question that I've gotten, and actually there's been a lot of people asking it. For example, Matt Turley and Jim Golden have asked something along the line of, how quiet is the D-Box system, and can you use it? To quote, I don't remember who exactly it was. Jim said, without waking the wife up.
I asked that same question before I got mine.
Yeah, that's right. Because you have roommates.
Because I live in an apartment and there's people below me and beside me. Yep.
Yeah. Well, shall I jump in?
Yeah, go for it, Zach.
It's a very quiet system, but with one caveat: the motion of the actuators doesn't make any noise, which, in my mind, is incredible. That they're moving and there's a lot going on there, but you can't hear anything from the actuators. I remember back in the day using Logitech force feedbacks, and it's like making these weird noises. This doesn't do that at all, However, the only caveat I would give is that it is shaking and moving around, and it can shake things in the building you're in. And there's some ways to help reduce that. And, maybe Anthony can talk about some of the things he did, but that's my feedback. Very quiet, but it is shaking things. And so that can make noise in and of itself. That's not the actuators making noise.
Zach, we're perfectly tuned with the audio as well, so you just have to put your headset on and everything's fine. So the challenge, I understand, is for the other people in the house. So yeah, and we've been through the settings before. So one thing we can recommend, because the vibrations are indeed intense. I mean, the product is really sturdy. You could create a profile where you remove some of that for the evenings or the times that you need to, in order to quiet it down. But as right. You said before, the motion is very silent, and once you have a little bit of sound around, you don't hear it. It perfectly blends. But yes, for the other half or the other roommates, if you're doing it at 2 or 3 a.m., it might be a little bit of a challenge. So tuning your system for those periods would be optimal.
Great. It's good that it's available and you can still make that change with the profiles that Anthony mentioned earlier. That's obviously one of the reasons they're there. It makes it a great feature. Moving along quickly, because obviously we want to get to the giveaway as fast as possible. We've got a question regarding dirt and rallycross. I'll just pull a bunch of questions together from Dan Fleming, Fusion Core, and Justin. Basically, people are wondering how the system would hold up to rallycross, or for a game like Dirt Rally. Would it be too intense because there's a lot of bumps and everything, or would the system have any weaknesses? And the feedback overall, people are concerned. That's a main concern that I see in the chat, and since I know the answer, I really want you guys to answer. Go ahead.
Yannick, you want to grab that one?
I can do part, but I have a feeling that Garrett could step in also. I can see him smiling over there, but for me, rally is my game. So that's really where I can get the full potential of the D-Box system. That's where there's a lot happening. So, but I mean, it really is a matter of, what do you want to create? So the motion profiles is really a key component in the D-Box system, and it can recreate any of the cues. So there's nothing as too much, I think. Cueing is important. I mean, the body will feel it before you see it or you hear it. So at the fast pace of rally, when you get in those tight spots, it becomes really important to react that split milliseconds. But
Yeah.
I would pass on to Garrett just for the sake of it.
Yeah, I actually remember when we had the 3-inch system here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's when you really get into being able to tune the settings of the motion system to the cars. Like Anthony was saying, you know, when you're getting that range of motion, like in the off-road trucks or in the rallycross cars, you know, you have a lot of motion as you go over the jumps. There's a lot of compression when you land, and you can really feel that as you land on the jump. And that's a really cool feature to have, and it gives you an idea of like how your car is settling when you're going up or when you're, you know, landing back down. As for dirt, you know, when you're getting up on the cushion, it helps you really know when you're grabbing the cushion or if you just hopped over it and the fence is coming. So it's really cool to be able to you know, tune to those features, and D-Box does a great job of, you know, simulating that.
One of my favorite features of rally with the motion system is when you come off of a jump, and then I don't know how you guys did it, but you feel weightless for a minute, and then it impacts the ground, and you feel it come back down, and it's just the neatest feeling. And it's interesting from a performance perspective, since Garrett's big time rally racer, that you need that feedback to be fast. So that's a pretty cool little tidbit.
That's awesome. A concern that I also see in the chat is that people were wondering about the sturdiness and the reliability of the system. And I can say, and obviously you guys can get into it as well if you want, but the systems are the sturdiest on the market. There's nothing that beats D-Box. I'll let you guys talk a little bit about the reliability if you want, and the fact that it's basically no maintenance as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I've talked about it a little bit, but that's where D-Box originated from. You know, the Army is using it. It's being put into areas where, you know, there's sand, there's, you know, it's difficult environment, and it needs to run, you know, a lot. Theme park attraction are really another area where it's being put into 16 hours back to back, going through the system. So the system has been put into a hard pressure. And again, the system has been out there for 10, 15 years. So the same customers we had originally are still using it today and just coming back to us, providing feedback. So the proof is in the pudding, they say. We can back it up. So
super. Just moving on quickly, because I want to let Anthony pick a few questions as well. I have one last questions that I really want to get to in terms of very specific and technical. Larry is asking what kind of power requirements would be required to operate D-Box. Does it require 30 amp service? I think that's a question that's worth answering. A lot of people that are considering buying it have that question.
Yeah, that's a good question. You can buy various voltages. So here in the U.S., it's a 110 volt system, so there's no wiring that needs to be done. When we install these systems, there's no additional power that has to be run. It's just pick a room and plug it in. So it's again, surprisingly, the performance is good, even in terms of power consumption. That it's very low power consumption system. So there's any house that has standard wiring, it's going to be fine. 110 volts, good to go.
Super.
And I'll just add, if you allow
go
me,
ahead.
Mark, the technology of D-Box, it's not really advertised, but it's really in the age of electric vehicle. It's basically the same thing. We have capacitors inside the ACMs, which acts like a battery. So when you plug it in the system, it loads up, and afterwards it just regenerates itself as it goes through. So it's very cost effective on the consumption side. And it's way below 10 amp breaker, so I mean, it's a plug and play system.
Right. Thank you. I see some more technical questions. We might have time to get back to you, but I want to let Anthony pick a few questions. So I'll just feature you, Anthony, and you can walk through however you want to work this. You can look at the chat yourself maybe and answer some of the key questions. You have the floor.
All right. Well, I'll start with Justin here. He asked, do you think it's more important to have an accurate feeling rig, or do you think comfort is more important for the average sim racer who won't likely get the chance to drive a real car? So that's an awesome question, because it's a unique situation, right? And it is actually, I can relate to when I drive cars and iRacing I've never driven in real life. I think for me personally, my SimSeats cockpit is comfortable and accurate. So you can't really get much better than that because you're getting the best of both worlds. You know, I could sit in here. People have seen me stream for hours on end. I think I've done a 12-hour stream before and been fine. Not to mention that it's actually accurate in terms of the way I'm seated and kind of lined up with all of the devices and equipment on the rig. So I would say accuracy is definitely important, but you definitely want to be comfortable because if you're not comfortable, it's probably going to impact your performance. But on another side of things, if you have an accurate seating position, you might feel more immersed. So if you've never driven in real life and maybe don't plan on or don't think you'll have the opportunity to, I think there's a happy medium and a healthy balance, and you can kind of get an idea from the SimSeats SRX chassis or seeing some of the videos I've made about my rig to try to find that fine line and what works for you. I see next, Jim had asked, you answered that question about the noise. I could say from experience, I had the same concern when I had gotten my platform and D-Box actuators, and they assured me that it's very, very near completely silent if you shut vibrations off. So when I had made the video about the settings, the engine vibration and skid vibration, if those are on 0, someone could be standing right next to you and not even hear it. You just see it, which is kind of crazy, like Zach said. But that's one of the coolest parts about the fact it being an electronic system and not hydraulic or anything like that.
Just a heads up, Anthony, we don't want to run too long, so 1 or 2 more questions for everybody else. I know there's a lot of questions. That's really good. Honestly, we're really glad. Keep an eye on our social media, either D-Box and Anthony. If you can, ask your questions there throughout the next week. We'll try to answer as many as we can directly on Facebook, Twitter, wherever you might ask a question, because we don't want the webinar to run too long, but you have a lot of really good questions. We want to announce the prize as soon as possible. So Anthony, 1 or 2 more, and then we'll jump into the prize giveaway right away.
Perfect. Richard asks if I think that the motion sim makes it easier to pick up on your mistakes behind the wheel. I can honestly say from experience it's actually helped me on the simulator be more competitive, especially when driving new cars or new tracks that I don't have a ton of experience at. And the reason for that just gives you more feel. Obviously, when you're sitting statically, it's really hard to feel what's going on. It's kind of hard to explain if you've never done it before, but you hear a lot of racers say they drive through their seat and you feel what's going on underneath you, the tires, the braking. And if you're in a static rig, the only feel you get is the force feedback from your wheels. So to be able to feel the suspension moving, feel the tire lockup or the threshold of lockup, as well as, you kind of rolling over these curbs or standing on the throttle. And this actually relates to someone else's question about what happens if you drift. Well, if you get sideways off the corner, it's going to lean over on that outside rear tire and allow you to feel, and maximize the capabilities of the car, which is probably the coolest part and one of the most valuable. So it definitely helps, which is what I would say is the most important piece about it from a driver or sim racer perspective. I think that's all I've got for now. Those questions were probably the best that stood out to me. So I think we can move on to the final piece.
I'll let you close it out. Thank you again from my side. Thank you again to everyone for watching. Now is the time that everybody's been waiting for. So I'll let Anthony announce the winner of the giveaway. There's going to be more, so make sure you stay tuned. And this has been great from everyone at D-Box SimSeats. So Anthony, you can take it away.
Well, first off, I want to thank everyone for being here and tuning into the webinar, everybody who signed up and took part in the giveaway. I hope we answered your questions. As Mark said, if we didn't, don't hesitate to reach out on social media. Feel free to leave a comment on here or in my DMs. I'd love to help as many of you as I can. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate everyone at SimSeats and D-Box as well, including my race engineer, David, for coming on board tonight to help make this happen for you all. So without further ado, I do want to congratulate our SimSeats SRX chassis giveaway winner, and it's Jason Rocco from Virginia. which is awesome. That's actually local for SimSeats. It sounds like Zach and Garrett are going to have a delivery to make sometime soon. But thank you for everyone who entered and took part. Jason, congratulations. SimSeats will reach out and follow up with you to make sure you get squared away. Once again, thank you everyone for being a part of this. It was a true pleasure, and if you'd like to see more like this, be sure to let us know, because we'd be more than happy to do more giveaways or webinars like this. We hope it was informative and insightful. But thank you all for tuning in, and have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you all.